Welcome to Popcorn Planet. Oh my gosh, look who's here right next to me. He's right here, Mr. Christopher Melcher. I'm so honored to be here in LA with Christopher and give you guys a quick video about Danny Masterson and the jury deadlock. If you guys are unaware, I have this here. Pardon me as I'm trying to do this from the office here, but my goodness, this was a wild update to the case. Guys, the jury is in deadlock. And I want to get all the thoughts from Christopher, what this means. Did Scientology win? Are they going to lose? Is this an actual draw? How does a jury deadlock on such a serious case? And why is Danny Masterson smirking? Oh, here it is. Here's the smirk. The alleged smirk is right there as he leaves the office. Yeah, I don't know. Is this a smirk, Christopher? Feels like that's just a look.
I think that's just the way he looks.
Well, all right, sir. We got to. So this is a lot. How often does a jury deadlock?
Well, it doesn't happen that often, but in California, we have 12 jurors on a criminal trial. So it has to be unanimous, all 12 people agreeing. What are the chances? 12 people agreeing on stuff. Here we have 3 accusers back from 20 years ago that are saying that he did all these awful things to them. And the defense is basically saying, no, we didn't do any of this stuff. It's all made up. These ladies have kind of got together and they're setting it up to try and get some payday against Danny. The prosecution saying, no, that's not the case, that these ladies didn't even know about each other until more recently. They had told their stories to other people, and they're very similar facts. But here, if you're sitting on a jury and you're looking at this case and saying, why are these allegations being brought so far after? And it is, we've talked in prior shows about how difficult that is. There's inconsistencies in the story. And of course, there's always going to be inconsistencies in a story, but this seems to be bothering one or more jurors. So they had this long trial. They did 2 days of deliberation. So the jury had the evidence the first time, getting a chance to talk in the jury room, and they announced, we cannot come to a decision. We're deadlocked. And the Judge Olmedo, who's a fantastic judge in Los Angeles, said, you haven't talked long enough.
Right.
We're going to take a Thanksgiving break. We're going to come back and you're going to continue talking. So that's where they're at in the trial. They did ask for some rereading of some testimony, so that can give us a clue of what they're hung up on. But this is a terrible, terrible sign for the prosecution and a very good sign for Danny Masterson.
So it is more of a win for Danny at the end of the day because he didn't lose.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not over yet. They're going to come back after this Thanksgiving break. So on November 28th, Monday, they come back and deliberate more. But, hey, the prosecution put this case on. They had multiple people testifying against him. And, we've seen in other cases where it's been a slam dunk and they take very little time, a day or two, and they're like unanimous. We agree this person's guilty. Here they talk for 2 days and they're saying one or more people saying, no way, we don't agree on a verdict. And so this is a horrible news for the prosecution. Great news for Danny. Just depends. None of us were there. We don't know what happened.
Right.
But this is a terrible, terrible sign for the prosecution and being able to convince 12 people to come to a verdict when they've already announced one or more of them cannot agree.
How often does a deadlock actually happen? And that in itself is pretty rare, correct?
Yeah, we do see it happening. It's hard to get 12 people to agree. Now, if there's what we call a holdout juror, so if there's one person on the jury that's saying, look, I'm not going to listen to the other 11 folks, and they're just not honoring their duty to listen to the evidence, follow the law, and deliberate, that person could be removed. But that's very unusual because you can have a firm, and you actually need to have a firm conviction or belief in your verdict. So there's nothing wrong with that. The misconduct by a juror would occur when they're saying, I'm not going to listen. I don't care. I've already made my mind. I won't listen to my 11 fellow jurors. If that happens, that person could be removed and an alternate would be put into place. But I don't anticipate that. There may be more than one juror who maybe 2 people saying, hey, I want to vote for conviction, and 10 people are saying, no, I want to say that he's not guilty, or vice versa. We just don't know the breakdown yet.
So I was going to ask that. It could be more than one person, but the deadlock and the time, could that still come where they're like, well, there's just one, we're going to use the replacement?
So yeah, what'll happen is when they come back on Monday, the judge will force them to basically talk for Monday. They'll probably come back at the end of the day or Tuesday and saying, nothing's changed or something did change, we have a verdict. If they say, hey, we're still deadlocked, then the court would ask questions like, well, how are you, without telling me how you're individually voting, what is the breakdown? Is it 10 people on one side and 2 people on the other side? And that would give the judge a clue. If it's 11-1, then they may be saying, hey, we got a holdout that's not deliberating properly. But they would want to know that breakdown. The judge would then say, hey, is there anything that I can do to help you, understand your task? Do you want to hear any more testimony read back to you? Do you want to hear the instructions again? So she's going to say, go back, think about it some more. So she really, really tries to get this verdict done unanimously. If they can't, they're going to declare a mistrial. And then the prosecution has the right to then, bring the case again to trial. And that's a nightmare for everybody, but that could happen. Now, like I say, the jurors did ask for some readback of testimony from Jane Doe 1. So she's been identified in that way. And she had testified that she had been attacked by Danny in 2003. He, of course, denies that. And there was a conversation afterwards between Danny and Jane Doe 1 where she asked, what happened? And he said, we had sex. And she responded back, no, no, no. Well, Danny's attorney is saying, well, hey, back in the day, 20 years ago, there was this conversation and you denied anything that happened, so therefore nothing happened. Jane Doe testified at trial saying, what I meant by no, no, no was meaning I didn't consent.
Right.
And so she explained that, what I'm understanding pretty vividly. But the jury wanted to hear that testimony read back when they said that they were deadlocked. So that gives us a clue that they are hung up on the credibility of Jane Doe 1, or really trying to understand. She also did receive a $40,000 settlement from Danny. And so that came out. And again, that kind of cuts both ways. I mean, so we don't know how the juror processes any of this information, but they're definitely hung up probably on some credibility issues, which this case really relies almost entirely on credibility. Yeah. And they may be saying hey, we can't come to a verdict, and then they're going to have to go retry the case with a new jury and see if there's any different outcome.
Two questions. First up, how many of those do you get? Can you literally have 10 mistrials and keep trialing it over and over again? Or is there eventually a point where the court system's no, you've had 3 juries, it's over?
There will be. So if a mistrial is declared, the defense will say, hey, there's no reasonable possibility of getting a verdict on this evidence. It would be the same result, and don't put my client through this. I think it just depends, but I think the judge would probably say, hey, we're going to do one more retrial. And so now, you got to put those accusers through all this again. They got to relive that and be cross-examined. And of course, Danny's got to relive that. He's got to pay his attorneys more money, and he's going to get bled dry at some point. Right. And then also it hurts the defense because you have, as a defense attorney, some tricks that you can play, basically, or surprises that you could use during the first trial that are now going to be known during the second trial. So when I was a former criminal defense attorney, I would hate it when I have to do a retrial, because the prosecution already knows the questions that I'm going to ask and the arguments that I'm going to make, and it's very difficult to win on the retrial.
Well, the other question I have to ask is what are the likelihoods, because Scientology has been obviously looming on this one pretty big. There's been a lot of accusations that they're behind this, et cetera, et cetera. What are the odds of this actually being a crooked thing, or Scientology or somebody? Again, I'm not saying names, but what are the odds someone could pay off a juror to be just play difficult, let this be a mistrial? Do you feel like, in your expertise, that can happen?
Well, I mean, anything can happen, but I mean, that's, almost unheard of to see a case reported where a juror has been corrupted. I think, though, what's more likely that we see in juror interviews at the end of these cases is that, they just don't believe somebody, or they can't accept the fact that allegations are being made so far after the fact, or prosecution is occurring for something that allegedly happened 20 years ago. So that may be bothering them. Maybe bothering them that he's a celebrity, and that maybe people are coming after him because he's a celebrity. So, it's hard. People get hung up on stuff, and that's why we have a jury system. So I don't think first corruption. I think, this is our system of justice, and we don't want one judge deciding whether, we are guilty if we are charged with a crime. We want 12 people in the community making that decision. And for better or worse, it's the way it works. But the system is definitely set up to make it very difficult to get a conviction, and jurors get to decide who they believe or not. So I don't know. And they were vetted, do you know, of Danny Masterson? There would have been asked about any ties that they have to Scientology. Now, of course, they can lie about this stuff, but both sides have jury consultants and investigators, and
To look into
they
it.
check this stuff out. And,
So ultimately, this is a win, though. You're saying a mistrial and a deadlock juror is a win right now for Danny and even Scientology.
well, anything other than a conviction is absolutely a good result for Danny Masterson. He is facing 45 years to life if he's convicted. So he's not only, potentially lost his career based on these allegations, but he could potentially go to prison for life if he's convicted of this. So there's definitely, something here to be said about this. So,
Well, there you have it. I appreciate Christopher's insight on this. We will keep you posted as the things come in on Monday. The Monday is when they sort of will come back with the juror. How much time will they have at that point, do you think?
So what I think they're going to have deliberations on Monday, and then Tuesday, I would imagine that's when the judge would say, hey, are we going to continue deliberating or not, and maybe remove that juror.
Well, there you go. Appreciate that insight. We will keep you posted on Monday as well. And thank you guys so much for being here, for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to Christopher as well, and we will be back with you soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.